Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We're right here at 1:30 for our collaborative conversations. This edition is going to be called Discerning the Future of Your Church Property, and we'll be talking about some programs to help you think about the future of some church property. I'm really excited to have everybody here today. We're going to explore some ways to think creatively and strategically about church buildings and the real property that we have, and hear from some speakers presenting some exciting programmatic opportunities. In today's discussion, we're going to have insights from those three speakers who are working with congregations on some innovative approaches on how to use property, some sustainability, and we'll touch on community engagement. Our speakers this afternoon, we'll hear from Rob Hagan and Sandra Moon from the Presbyterian Foundation. We also have Mark Sampson from Rooted Good, and Philip Fye and Brian Hoysa. Philip, I hope I pronounced that right, like beige with an F, Fige, from Old Town Community Church. So I hope the presentation sparked new ideas in everyone, and I look forward to a great meeting. Since we do have some individuals with some time constraints, I think we'll jump right in to our first presenters, and that'll be Rob Hagan and Sandra Moon.
Great. Thank you, Thomas. And thank you, Mark, for allowing us to be here. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay, super. Well, I am Reverend Rob Hagan. I'm with the Presbyterian Foundation. I'm the Ministry Relations Officer for the Northwest. And that means that I come beside churches and help create a culture of generosity, which includes Project Regeneration 2.0. But I also had invited a colleague named Sandra Moon. She's on the screen as well. And I invited her because Sandra is replacing me January 1st. I'm retiring at the end of the year. So Sandra is going to be the new Ministry Relations Officer. So Sandra, maybe you could get just a brief overview of who you are and why are you excited about coming to the Northwest?
Thank you, Rob. I'm in my car because I apologize right after I introduce myself. I can stick around for a few minutes, then I'm going to have to hop to another meeting. But my name's Sandra Moon, and I will be your new Ministry Relations Officer starting January 1st. I'm currently the Ministry Relations Officer in the Cumberland region, which is Kentucky, Virginia, and Tennessee. And I have lived in Louisville, Kentucky for the past 18 years, but I will be relocating to Portland sometime in the next few months. I'm currently a minister member of Mid-Kentucky Presbytery, but once I am moved and settled in, I'm planning to transfer my membership to Cascades Presbytery. So I really look forward to getting to meet some of you at some point, hopefully sooner than later. And I will be in Portland actually starting tomorrow in preparation for Stewardship Kaleidoscope, which begins Monday. So I think I might be meeting with some of y'all while I'm out there. But it's nice to meet you all, and I really look forward to getting to know you better.
Great. Thank you, Sandra. Sandra has done a lot of work in the Cumberland area in terms of project regeneration. So let me kind of get into what this is. The foundation heard from many churches that they wanted to have some sort of tangible way of looking at the future, not only including property, but the kind of totality of their ministry. So when we come into the church, we want to walk beside the church and listen to the church. But we know that there are three things that the church is always trying to look at and why people give not only time and their talent and their treasure to. They give to people because people give to people. People give to vision. And then it's a core stewardship, and giving is a core value in transaction, even when you're talking about property. So what we do is we enlist the session to be a part of this. Some churches I have worked with, they've invited the entire congregation, and they've invited the entire congregation to engage in this in Project Regeneration 2.0. So what we do is that we walk beside the churches in 3 different sessions. So what it is that we will provide materials, will be kind of one of the speakers that will lead the session through these materials, and really to decide what's best for your church after that third session. So let me kind of dive into each one of these sessions and what they comprise. The first session is we talk about vision, which comprises who are you, where are you going, and what do you have to declare. We talk about core values, and maybe you've already done something about your core values within the section, but we have an exercise looking at the core values because that is a huge part of your church and where you're going to go. And then the other thing, we look at the life cycle of the church. Where are you in the life cycle of a particular church? What are you struggling with? How can you reinvent yourself? How can you maybe redistribute some of the assets that you have? So in that session, we also hand out, and each session's about 2 hours. And we'll include dinner with that as well, because we find that everyone likes to work around kind of the communion table or the communal aspect of discernment. And then the final thing is we hand out Joan Gray's book, A Sailboat Church. And that is a way of looking at the church in a totally different way, looking at a metaphor of being a sailboat. Are you a rowboat church or a sailboat church? And we dive into that, have a pretty deep dive into that, kind of looking at the ecclesiology of your church and the theology. So everybody on the session is supposed to commit to the 3 sessions, and then to read the part where it really deals with the ecclesiology of the church. And so that's the first session, and it's about 2 hours. The second session deals also with a part of looking at that book and having that conversation, but also it's a financial and giving analysis. And that can be done by Zoom. We would prefer meeting face to face, but we do a financial and giving analysis, bands of giving, age bands, looking at the last 5 or 6 years of your giving and looking at your financial analysis, basically to say how much runway do you have left in terms of your sustainability. And obviously, we just don't want to talk about money because there's a wealth of life in each church, but that's part of the practical things that we have to consider. And between the second and the third session, the second session consists of the financial analysis, giving analysis, and then talking about the book and looking at that. And then the third one, what it is looking at the different options, coming and obviously talking about what you learned in terms of your prayer time, because from the second to the third time is 40 days of prayer, which is part of the book. So we enter into this 40 days of prayer. We come back, we look at what God is telling us, what the Spirit is telling us, and then we devise groups and we go over what are 7 options. The first option is, do we age in place? That is using the resources available to you to stay in your local location as long as your fiscal health allows. The second one is to share your campus with another congregation or group to help sustain your ministry. The third one is to merge with another church to create a new healthy congregation. Sell your church campus and find a new location that is better suited to your current needs. Reinvent your church with new ministries. This can vary widely depending on your church's situation. Close your current congregation and restart it as another church. That is probably the more complex one, but we can talk about that. And then close your church and create an endowment to fund ministries your church supports forever. So those are the options, the 7 options that we begin to start to unpack in that third session. And then we suggest that you devise a leadership team along with members of the session, members of the congregation, to engage these 7 options. Some of them are options that immediately session will say, no, we're not going there. Some are, let's talk about that. And then the third one is, yeah, let's really, really explore these things. And that's what the leadership committee does. So that in a nutshell is Project Regeneration. Obviously, we can meet with your church in session and unpack that. as much as you want. So, Thomas, I will engage, and I think Sandra had to go, but
Yeah.
I'll engage any questions that you might have.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rob. And for congregations interested in Project Regeneration, what does the time frame look like for full completion of
That's
the
a
project?
that's a great question. Probably between 3 and 4 months. It depends. The most important thing is the prayer time between the second and the third uh, session. So you need to have 40 days, and probably give or take some. But it also it takes time to percolate in terms
Mhm.
of, okay, what is it that we want to do as a congregation? How can we engage this sailboat church metaphor and our vision and our core values? So that takes a while, but I'd say between 3 and 4 months.
Great, thank you. Looks like
Uh-huh.
we have a question from Kathy Keener.
Hey, Kathy.
Hello, Rob. What is the cost for churches to participate in this?
None. You don't have to have any cost. In fact, we provide all the materials. In fact, we can provide a dinner too. So there's no cost. That's what the foundation is here for. We're a ministry. No cost for me. There's nothing, or Sandra. So yeah. Now, if you want to have the congregation, we'll supply the books for the session and those who participate. Some churches invite kind of what is called influencers in the church, those who, have had longevity, have given their time, talent, and their treasure to the church to participate. Well, some churches want the whole congregation to participate, at least in reading the book together and praying together through those 40 days. There's one church I worked with in Olympia where it was a small church. They invited the whole congregation to participate in this. That was fun. That was fun. That was a good time for the whole congregation to participate in that. Because the session wanted to be totally transparent.
Great question, Kathy. Thank you, Rob.
Rob, Rob, how many congregations do you think that you could handle at one time going through this? In other words, I mean, if you had 15 congregations all of a sudden at one time here in our presbytery wanting to go through this process, could you manage that?
15, we would have to kind of talk about that because there's other things that we do, right? So yeah, we usually handle 2 to 3 times, maybe in a calendar year, because it takes a long time in regards to those 3 or 4 months to do it right. If 15 churches, I would have to maybe call in some support, maybe some other folks that are MROs in the country, but we would have to kind of work on that. But that 15 people would be great. 15 churches would be super. We'd want to work with each one of them.
And then just one other quick question. I know that I did not hear a parish model, which I participated in with 3 congregations that were able to keep their buildings, but then figured out a way to not just to be a part of one congregation, but that each congregation could still meet in their worship center or in a smaller building. But it was a way of joining uh, the staff, which is the personnel, is usually the most expensive ongoing expense. But I was just wondering if you had approached that model as well.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that because there is a ministry in Glacier Presbytery called the Milk River Churches, and that's what they do. In fact, there's 2 Presbyterian churches and 1 Lutheran church, and they're about 30 minutes apart. That can pose some problems, distances in Montana, obviously, but they share staff and they do things together. So it's a unique thing. It's a cooperation. It's a collaborative effort.
Yeah, that model does work, and I would love to see our presbytery look at that model again. But we did it for 7 years, and it worked well. But anyway, just to add, thank you.
Yeah, Glacier Presbytery is someone you may want to engage with in the Milk River churches. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Uh-huh. Any other questions? Great questions.
All right, everyone. Well, Thank you so much, Rob.
Yeah,
And
let me give you my contact information. If you want to know more, just give me a call at 509-521-5400. And then it's rob.hagan, Hagan, at presbyterianfoundation.org. And you can go on the foundation website and hunt for Project Regeneration, type that in, and it will take you to, actually, it'll take you to some videos, 4 or 5 videos where Project Regeneration has really helped churches discern the future. And it's, it's up to the church, right? I mean, we don't want to come in and tell folks what to do. We want to walk beside you. So
absolutely. Thank you so much, Rob. And
you bet.
if
Great.
anyone wants to get in touch with Rob, you could also reach out to me and I will certainly facilitate that.
Yep. Great. Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you, Rob. And now we will move to our second speaker of the afternoon. We have Mark Sampson, and Mark Sampson is with Rooted Good, and he's going to be talking about the Good Futures Accelerator course.
Great. Well, thank you, Thomas. Hello, everybody. My name's Mark Sampson, and I am speaking to you from Michigan. My accent suggests that I have not spent a lot of time in Michigan, and I am actually from Ohio. That's not true. England. And, some of you are like, what the? So that it's really fun to talk to you, and I'm excited to share a little bit about what we've been up to and how we've been helping churches really navigate this tricky moment we're in, but with faith, hope, and changing how we often see our buildings and our context as one of scarcity, but trying to find eyes of faith, eyes that see where abundance and hope and opportunity might be found. So about 4 years ago now, we started a pilot. We received a grant from the Lilly Endowment to do some work around helping churches start a project that achieves 3 things. One, it uses their, most important of all, it fulfills their sense of mission and purpose in their local community in new ways. 2, it uses their buildings and land in new ways. And 3, generates a new form of revenue for the church. So, mission, buildings, and money. Can projects be started that can do all 3? So a little bit about my background and our team's background. So I have a background in starting what we call social enterprises, which is really using kind of business models, logic, to achieve some sort of purpose in society. I'm really passionate about this. I ended up actually getting a doctorate in theology and economics, and I've written some books around sort of theology and social enterprise. I'm passionate about how we can address some of the really tricky situations in our communities in new creative ways. So I come from this background. My colleagues, the founders of Rooted Good, Mark Elsden, a Presbyterian minister, he founded something called Press House, which you might have heard of, which is student ministry in Madison, Wisconsin, that built a large student housing in the car park of the church, and has been able to sort of transform the model, both the money and the mission of what they do as an organization. And my other colleague, Shannon Hopkins, who's a sort of serial entrepreneur and has started more things than you could possibly count. So the 3 of us got together and thought, we're going to spend a good chunk of our time building an organization to help churches do this, really believing that churches have remarkable history in doing this work for years. Often it's not talked about, but also at the moment there's remarkable opportunity to do it even more, to use our incredible assets, what we have in our communities, for the good of our neighbors, and in a way that can also solve some of the economic challenges our churches are facing. So in order to kind of build out the materials in the process, 4 years ago, we started a pilot project. And I'm excited to tell you there was a church, I'm pretty sure from your presbytery, that was part of this pilot, Westminster Presbyterian Church in Portland, Oregon. And I don't know if anyone from that church is on the call, but anyway, they were part of that pilot, and I'll talk a bit more about what they got up to in a moment. But we gathered about 25 churches from around the country, very different contexts, and created an experiment, create some materials, create some processes, and said, okay, take these processes and materials with your church, and we'll walk with you and see what you can create, what ideas you can come up with that are missional, that use your buildings in new ways, and that generate some more revenue for you. And we really didn't know if it was going to work, right? But we were absolutely thrilled with some of the outcomes of this initiative. So, for example, we had projects emerge from this that were on the smaller end, some in the medium, and some on the much sort of larger end. The projects that Westminster Presbyterian Church in Portland did, they've done two projects. One is that they've partnered with a local organization to allow food entrepreneurs to come and use their commercial kitchen during the week and start food-based enterprises. And they've partnered with a specific organization to do this, the Native American and Youth and Family Center. And it's been fantastic to give space and opportunity for people that really need it to sort of start a food-based enterprise. And of course, some of our kitchens and some of our churches are used once a month. So let's use them 6 days a week, right? And also what they did, this is great, is they had, and I love that churches have this, they had an office suite in the basement that hadn't been used for 18 years. And so they renovated it, they put in new flooring, new lights, they made it all look great, and they've now renting it out to a sort of mission-aligned nonprofit in the community who, giving home and space to somebody. So that was their project. Some small but significant steps towards this work. We had another church, actually another Presbyterian church in Gulf Shores, Alabama, that had a very large education wing that hadn't been doing much educating. And so they were interested in what could this offer to our community. Our process involves some community listening, some activity where you go out and you talk and you understand what's happening, some of the key people in your neighborhood, key people that have lived there a long time. And in this process, they discovered that the small business community was really just appreciated by the community, and it struggled to find the right kind of space as a small business grew. There wasn't a lot of sort of office space, particularly that was supportive for these businesses. So they worked with the Chamber of Commerce and thought, I wonder if we could do something with our education wing. So they ran some seminars originally just to get people in the building, and then they announced that they're going to create space for small businesses. And pretty soon they were completely full. And it fascinatingly, and probably most importantly for me, this became something the congregation realized was part of its mission, that this was who they were serving, almost becoming the kind of implicit chaplains, right, of this community of growing small businesses that was bringing economic development to their community and neighborhood. And so that's going really well. And then we saw some big projects come through, some of which you'd be familiar with around affordable housing, looking at sort of workforce housing, trying to do the sort of development project that can turn a church space into a more multi-use community space where the congregation still meets on a Sunday, but it can be used in multiple ways throughout the week. These projects are all in various stages of their sort of process, because as you know, it takes a long time for these to come to fruition. And as we heard earlier in the call, you've got to get a lot of stakeholders involved: the city, the planning and zoning, the community, the developer, the money, and all of that. And so we kind of help people get off in the right trajectory towards doing those kinds of projects as well. But so we're seeing lots happen. We just relaunched and we redid the materials from what we learned from the pilot, and we relaunched the program as the Good Futures Accelerator in January of this year. And we just had 2 weeks ago our 100th church start their process, their Good Futures process. And we're really excited also to announce that in this year we have signed a partnership agreement with PCUSA. So we worked with the PMA, a Presbyterian Mission Agency, and including some of Rob's colleagues at the Presbyterian Foundation and others across the sort of landscape of PCUSA to think about how we can customize these materials to really suit the needs of PCUSA churches in the US. As part of that agreement, any PCUSA church can get these materials for half price, for 50% off the standard price. And they're also able to reach out to a team at the Presbyterian Mission Agency to sort of talk about what they're up to. And so that's been really exciting. And we've been thrilled that there are now other denominations wanting to copy what PCUSA, who were the first to do this, have done. And there also might be another opportunity for you to get involved. I'm not going to steal Philip Faig's thunder. He's coming after me, but I just want to flag that that's not the only way you can get involved with some of these materials. Let me just briefly describe what actually this involves, right? Because I've kind of given you what it achieves and I've given you the context, but what does it involve? So the course is a self-directed course, and you will receive a box. Indeed, we just have one here that's getting sent out tomorrow. It's a box, and this box is full of materials for a team of about 5 from your congregation. We encourage both clergy and lay leaders to get involved, to go through a series of discussions, really, a series of sessions, 7 in total, that unpacks all the aspects of helping you come up with a really good idea, an idea that fulfills your mission, uses your buildings and land in new ways, and generates a new form of revenue. So we guide you through a process. There's some videos to start with, and then you sit around these worksheets and you have workbooks and you discuss and have conversations and sort of begin to make decisions together. We help you understand a bit about your church's identity, looking backwards to see where your church has done creative and innovative things before, helping remind you this isn't the first time you've done this kind of work. We help you think about, crucially, where you are. We get you out into your neighborhood, talking to people, observing how things are changing, really reaching out to some key sort of leaders in your community. And we help you understand what you have, particularly your buildings and assets. We help you go through a process of walking around and identifying all of the different spaces and places that are under your care and stewardship. And then we help you come up with and choose which ideas do you want to try and pursue. And then crucially, after that, we help you think through, okay, how will we begin to experiment and test and find out if our idea has traction, that it really kind of fits a need and that people want to engage in it. Our biggest fear with churches engaging this work, I've been part of church for many years, and I've been guilty of this, is that we can do a build it and they will come model, right? And what we now know is that won't work. We have to meet our communities where they are at, with what they're engaged in, with what they're interested in. Of course, with our theology and our beliefs, right at the heart of who we are, of course. But we have to engage where they're at. And we end this process by helping you build a plan. You can go through this at your own pace, but it kind of normally takes a church about 7 months, because we want people to work through it at a pace that they can also talk to and bring in and bring along the wider congregation. We have a few ways you can do that. One's a fun game called Mission Possible that we created that some of you might have played, and some other ways you can engage a broader set of stakeholders as you journey towards coming up with your idea and project. I will stop there because I don't want to sort of take up too much time, but suffice it to say, just to clarify the cost, so the 50% off cost is $375 to participate in this. So as you'd imagine, the standard price is $750, and you'll get the box. The box includes a couple of books as well. The book Gone for Good. I don't know if you've heard about that. It's a colleague, Mark Elsden, edited, and we launched that this year. And that's a fascinating book looking at the issue of church property from a sort of 30,000-foot perspective, because we're in a moment where there's going to be, unless we get creative, the sort of biggest transfer of sort of church property into often commercial real estate than any other point of sort of the history of the church. And I'm just really concerned that we're going to sort of sleepwalk our way a little through this process by only thinking about it one at a time. So I'm thrilled that you guys as a whole presbytery are looking at this, not just individual churches. So much credit to you guys for being strategic and thoughtful and making sure we can kind of, get creative in the midst of what seems like a crisis. But of course, I actually think there's a promise and a hope in the midst of it for sure. So that's a bit about me, a bit about Good Futures. I will give you some links for you to look more at the materials, and there's crucially a link that enables you to get the discount if you want to purchase it as well. So don't miss out on that for sure. Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Mark, and everyone else.
Thank you so much, Mark. That was wonderful, very informative. One thing that struck me that I wanted to ask, with this being a self-guided course, does Rooted Good or does some sort of bandwidth exist for, let's say, a congregation has begun the program and while they're working through some of the phases, they think, wow, this is interesting. I've never really thought about this before, but I'm wondering if there's someone that I could reach out to just maybe get some clarity or ask some questions, get a little bit of guidance as we work through this as a congregation.
Yeah, so there's a few different ways that churches can be supported through this process. I believe Philip might talk about one very exciting opportunity very shortly, but we also have seen cohorts of churches go through this. So, for example, some of your neighbors to the east of you at the Presbytery of the Inland Northwest are currently have a cohort going through Good Futures of PCUSA churches, and they're going to follow that with a few more. So that's one way where you can have mutual support and mutual encouragement from other churches. I believe that ultimately churches learn from churches, and I love seeing that mutuality sort of take place. Also, there's a team at the national level, Corey Schlosser Hall, who I also believe is from near where you guys are in the north. He was Presbytery leader in your neck of the woods. He's heading up some of this work for PMA, and his team are available to sort of discuss and learn with and talk to as well. But the course is designed to be self-directed. But I would say this, having sort of seen a number of churches go through this, you can do this. Like, you really can. I've seen some very small churches. I've seen some medium churches. I've seen big churches. I've seen rural churches, urban churches, suburban churches, churches in very wealthy communities, churches in profoundly underserved communities, all go through this and come up with something to really sort of experiment, try, and see what happens with. So have confidence that this is not too much, right? It's new for sure, but it's not too much.
Yeah, absolutely. I think to echo the words of our trustee and committee member Mark Olson, never doubt the capabilities of a small group with a strong mission. So that's wonderful.
Right.
Do you have any additional questions for? I know I saw one in the chat while we were having our presentation. Let's see. I believe Lynn Helmke says, Mark, what is the name of the church that you just mentioned that worked with the local Chamber of Commerce? We're looking to do something with their educational building.
Oh, that's a great idea. So I think it's called Gulf Shores First Presbyterian Church. Yes, that's right. In Gulf Shores. So Gulf Shores First Presbyterian Church. But there's lots of examples. So one of the things I would encourage you to do, and this is what I think what Rob's the same, I know Philip's the same as well, is don't look for solutions. Look for a process to get you somewhere. And I think is so often when we're in the moment, right, of there being a lot going on around us, we just look for a solution. Maybe it's housing, maybe it's this model, maybe it's that model. The real question is, what's right for you? What's right for your context? What fits your gifts, your skills, your history as a church, and what's needed in your community? And going through those questions, and it's really not rocket science, right? There's a number of ways to get there, will lead to something. And even if you come up with the same idea that you thought maybe at the back of your mind you started with, how you get to your idea is everything. Like, the process really matters. So be encouraged by and inspired by stories from other churches for sure. But be aware that yours might look a little bit different.
Absolutely. Next, we have a question from Paul Davidson.
Actually, it's from Linda Oldenkamp. Linda?
Hi, I just wanted to ask, and I don't know very much about Sacred Places organization, but I just was curious how how your organization compares with that, or does it?
That's a great question. So so Partners for Sacred Places are really good friends of ours. They're based in Philadelphia, and they are fantastic. They've been around some of this question around the future of church and, well, actually multi-religious properties and how they can be sort of restored and renewed. They're actually partnering with us on this project in the Presbytery of the Inland Northwest. And we're working together to help churches there. But they're fantastic. They have some good resources. And they've got some real skills around thinking about how you share your space really well. So I'd encourage you to look them up, Partners for Sacred Places. They're really, really great people and really sort of mission aligned with what you guys are into, for sure.
But how do they differ from you?
So our process is self-directed. And they have some processes that you can engage in, but it would involve their team coming out to you, and they do that in certain programmatic ways. So you need to be signing up to a sort of program they have. Our stuff is sort of it's materials and yeah. So of course, therefore, it's a different price. It's a different sort of commitment on our part and for them for their process. So that's why partly we're working together in the sort of Inland Northwest Presbyteries, because we have sort of slightly different approaches and we're seeing how they sort of combine. But reach out to them and see.
And I didn't hear the name of your organization.
Oh, so we're Rooted Good.
You're what?
Rooted Good, ROOTED GOOD, and the materials is the Good Futures Accelerator.
Okay, great, thanks.
Thank you.
Wonderful. All right. We have any other questions? We have just a few more moments here. All right. Seeing none, I'd like to introduce our next speaker. Our final speaker would be Philip Feig, and Brian was unable to join us, speaking about the Building for Hope program from Old Town Community Church.
Yeah, well, good afternoon, you all. Thomas, thank you for the invitation. I'm really delighted to join this panel with Rob and with Mark. I'll tell you a little bit more about the connection we have with Rooted Good here in just a little bit. But my name is Philip Feig. I'm the pastor of Old Town Community Church in Old Town Alexandria. We are just a few blocks from the Potomac River, from which you can see the White House, the Capitol, the monuments, all that. So just to let you have a sense of where we are with a visual there. And we represent a program called Building for Hope. Building for Hope is a brand new program supported by the Lilly Endowment Foundation of Lilly Pharmaceuticals. And our purpose is to help churches take the journey to consider repurposing their underutilized facilities for the sake of congregational and community renewal. Our vision, our dream is to see both congregations and communities flourishing. We are excited to be sort of the new guys in this space, to be candid with you. And in full transparency, we have been incredibly inspired by our friends at Rooted Good. And our journey and our program includes and utilizes the Good Futures Accelerator in the context of a cohort journey for congregations. I am I've been a pastor now for 30 something years, and I've pastored churches in mostly the South, Virginia. But I did spend a stint in Minnesota. I didn't get all the way across the country to Oregon, but I do have in-laws that live in Oregon, and I'm grateful for the churches out there. And and one of the things that I'm incredibly excited about, and I know this might sound strange, and it's really hard, but the church is, now fully in sort of a post-Christendom era. We have been sort of put out into the margins of our communities in many ways. And yet, I think that the margins is where the opportunities are to return to some of our strongest missional impulses. We were born, the church, on the margins, and I think there's a lot of opportunity there. Our friends at Rooted Good talk about embracing your constraints, and I know those constraints feel really hard. I'm in a church that has engaged the journey of repurposing our underutilized facilities. We have 45,000 square feet right in the middle of a beautiful city, and we only used not even half of it on any given Sunday. And now, by repurposing it, we've faced our community, we have engaged our mission, and now hundreds of people each week utilize our facility that are not related to our congregation. So I know there is opportunity to return to our roots in the season we're in. It's difficult, but there's opportunity there. I would say this, I concur with Mark. I don't think that this is rocket science, but I do think it's heart surgery. And some of the most difficult things churches do are simple in nature at times, right? And so I think the journey for congregations that engage this movement, whether it's through Rooted Good or the organization that Rob is with, or through Building for Hope or Sacred Places, that it is a journey of the heart. And that's first and foremost, and that's what drives our approach to this here. Now, do you all mind if Thomas, may I share a PowerPoint presentation? Is that okay? Do I have permission?
Absolutely. Let me make sure that your permissions are set and
Okay.
should be good to go.
Okay, let's see here. All right. It's still not letting me do it. But that could be on my end. So
You should be good to go now.
okay, should be good to go now. Okay, here we go. There it is. All right, if you all will bear with me. Can you see that? Somebody
Yes.
shake their head. Yes, great. So the vision for Building for Hope is to create a movement of sustained revitalization through creative community-based uses of unutilized church facilities. And so Building for Hope, our desire is to see congregations inhabit their neighborhood as sacred spaces and utilized for the best and highest good. That's a phrase that I believe is woven through a lot of Rooted Goods work. It's a phrase that, I take a walk around the block of where my church is located, and I can walk by 3 buildings that used to be worshiping communities that are now commercial enterprises. Now, I am not anti-business. And I thank God for work, and I thank God for the sacred nature of work and how work provides for us. But often when a church gets to a place where they need to repurpose their facility or sell their facility, it goes to the best and highest bidder and not necessarily the best and highest good for the community. And those spaces have a purpose and they have a place. And there's a potential for them to have a new purpose and a new place in the community. One of the things that I share with my congregation often is, so in a post-Christendom era, we are no longer, the visual here is like the church in the valley, in Christendom, our churches and our facilities were like in the valley. The culture just funneled people into the life of the church. But now the image, and this is from some of our friends at Fresh Expressions, but now the image is churches are more like church on the side of a hill. That in general, culture just pushes people right past the church. You all know this out in the Pacific Northwest as well as anybody in this country. And culture pushes people right past the church. Yeah, a few come in and stay, but in general, they don't. So what we need to do is create fresh expressions of church. We need to create ministries that go out to where the people are. Well, what's really fascinating about building for hope and rooted good and sacred places and all that, what's really fascinating is when we have an opportunity to use our facilities for the community to engage them, it is a different way of the community actually coming in contact with the church. And so for us, for example, our space is really a community hub. In this community hub, we have a nonprofit center through which nonprofits can rent office space at way below market rate. We welcome 9 recovery groups a week into our space. We have a feeding ministry that cooks a hot meal for the homeless, the hungry, some of whom are unsheltered. We have grocery distribution and so forth. But we could consider ourselves the missionaries to that community that engages our facility that's not part of the worshiping congregation. Now, part of what we're going to do through Building for Hope in one of the nuts and bolts session is how can your congregation build the bridge? How can you build the bridge to from your congregation to those using your facility? This is an incredible opportunity the Lord is giving us to engage not only the physical needs, but the spiritual needs of our communities. And this is across all socioeconomic levels. I'm in a town that has people who are incredibly wealthy and people who are incredibly struggling. And but this is an opportunity that bridges that and helps you meet those needs. One other thing I'll share before I get back into the PowerPoint is I just don't want you to leave this panel today without embracing the idea that this is a powerful opportunity to step into renewal and indeed resurrection. And there is extraordinary hope on the other side of these journeys of reconsidering your space. So I'll continue to describe this. I don't want to start preaching. I do that every Sunday. So the Building for Hope experience is our program is a cohort experience with 8 to 12 churches. We do ask for a 2-year commitment. In year 1, we call the discovery year. This year will guide each church through an interactive journey to discern how to repurpose their underutilized space by leveraging the intersection of your unique assets as a congregation and a significant need in the community, and as a result, discovering a social enterprise that will benefit church and the community. So for us here, it was a nonprofit center. There are 3 gatherings on site in year 1 in Alexandria, Virginia. When I finish, I'll talk about the potential for a cohort in Oregon. And these gatherings will feature case studies of congregations that have repurposed their space for congregational community flourishing, site visits to hear firsthand stories of renewal. We'll go visit churches that have done this. A guided curriculum from our core partner, Rooted Good. It's the Good Futures Accelerator. That includes work during the gatherings. We'll actually work through some of those together in the cohort, as well as throughout the year in your location at your congregation. We also have a faculty of experienced practitioners and subject matter experts. I'm really excited to share some of the people that we have that are joining us to share in some specific areas of like leadership, change management. I can't share the actual names yet because we're working on finalizing, but it's a really exciting group of people. We'll also include a biblical framework for congregation renewal based on the story of the feeding of the 5,000. Now, let me just say just a minute about this. It's a guide to renewal that I developed called Bread and Fish. And I don't think we should overlook this part of the process, right? Because I think when we ground our renewal journey in a biblical framework, it gives us permission to ask some really hard questions. So, for example, if you take the feeding of the 5,000, I'll be quick. Mark's version says that when the crowd saw Jesus and his disciples, they recognized them. So, how is Jesus recognized in your church? Is a question we talk about. Is Jesus recognized in your church? That's a really good question for every church to think about. It says, John's account says there was a boy there with 5 loaves and 2 fish. So what's in your basket as a congregation? What are your strengths? What are your assets? We'll use the Good Futures tool of mapping your congregational your space, but also what is the missional DNA of your congregation? The account says there were 5,000 men, and then parenthetically, some accounts say and women and children. So we'll do a deep dive in the demographics, hard data on who is in your community, who is not being counted in the same way that the people in power and privilege are being counted. The 5,000 men were the people in power and privilege, but there was a whole group of people there fed that they weren't. So who are we not seeing? Using our biblical imaginations a little bit, who packed lunch? Probably the boy's mom or grandma or maybe older sister. But in this question, we celebrate who are the saints that have gone before in your congregation that we need to celebrate, because when we celebrate the powerful stories of the past, we can uncover the missional DNA that bring us forward. So let me just give you a brief example. In my congregation occupies a facility that used to be occupied by the First Baptist Church of Alexandria. And when First Baptist Church moved out into the suburbs in the 50s, there was a group of people that said, no, we're committed to this community. We want to stay here. And we celebrate that story often because that DNA is in our congregation of community investment and involvement, and people who actually mortgaged their homes to buy the facility we have now. They were committed to staying in this community. So we leverage that story. That's one of the things that will help a church think about. Again, using our imaginations, who ate the leftovers? The story says that Jesus said, take 12 baskets and gather up the leftovers. Who ate the leftovers? Have you ever wondered that? So in this, what we talk about is who will be impacted. This is the future story, right? Who will be impacted, known to God, but unknown to us now? And we try to step into that space of imagination. So going back, sorry, let me go back here. There's peer learning and shared stories. And so that's an important part of the year one gathering. We'll enjoy great food in a cool location with really joyful people. So that's important. And each congregation can bring 3 people. We require a mix of clergy and laity to the experience. Year 2 is the delivery year. So if year 1 is the discovery year 2 is delivery. And in year 2, we by the end of year 1, a congregation will have come up with an idea, right, that will help them move their church and their underutilized facilities on mission in the community. Year 2 then is implementation. And so Building for Hope will provide coaching for the pastor for actually both years in 1 and 2. And we're using our partners, Center for Healthy Churches, to provide coaches. We'll also provide subject-specific mentors will be made available to congregations. So, for example, if your congregation chose to launch a nonprofit center, we would match you with a church that has done the same thing, just to walk with you and help you, resource you when questions come up. And then we'll also have virtual cohort connections for encouragement and connection. Now, all expenses for participating churches other than travel to Alexandria are covered by Building for Hope through a grant that's made possible by Lily Endowment. And even still, for congregations that need help with travel assistance and, for lack of a better term, travel scholarship, we also have an amount of funds that a church can apply for assistance traveling to Alexandria. Now, having said that, we have received a lot of interest from churches in Oregon. As a matter of fact, there are some of your churches in your presbytery that have already chosen to be part of our first cohort, whether here. But if we had enough churches that were interested in a cohort out in Oregon, we are working on having a different type of experience, maybe 2 touch points instead of 3, but customizing this journey and us coming to you rather than congregations coming here. So, but please know the journey I just described is for here coming to Alexandria, Virginia. So for more information, you can you can email me, and I will make sure that gets to the right person on our team, but pfag@buildingforhope.org. You can also go to our website, buildingforhope.org, look for the resource button, and download a couple of PDFs that describe this in greater detail. So Thomas, I'll stop there to see if there are any questions, and we can take it from there.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Philip. Do we have
You're
any
welcome.
questions? Mark.
A question one was, I didn't get the cost of that particular program, the Building for Hope, excluding travel.
There's no cost. This is
Okay.
all made possible by the grant from the Lilly Foundation.
Great. Good. Just I think a comment. I know that we're getting short on time, and that is coming from the trustees and the property committee of our churches, again, in our Presbyterian tradition. It is the presbytery that has the final say so on property. It is where if you close your church, again, the proceeds. But within that process, we have this thing called an administrative commission, which is kind of when you decide to close comes in, and then the new ministries idea come in. But again, I would just urge our congregations to continue to look before that point of how can we continue our ministry where we are. And again, I've seen, again, having worked within a parish with 3 congregations, one of those congregations has now sold their building to the city itself. And from there they rent, but they do concerts, they do art galleries, they're doing all kinds of things. And yet the church continues not only as a building that still represents the structural symbol of what we have used for a long time, that lets people know that that's a sacred space. Some of our buildings continue to be sacred space, but my question is again, how we go about continuing this, the work that was started way before us, and it connects all the way back to Jesus, connects all the way back to Moses, all the way back, right? We continue to be a place of hope, and just urging our congregations to not think about this before they close their church, but begin to think about it now and be ready.
Yeah, Mark, let me affirm that. I think your name is Mark. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been the pastor of this church for 9 years, and when I first came in, we weren't near, and still aren't, by the grace of God. We've experienced some renewal, but I wanted us to ask this question while we still had strength, because I wanted for us, but this is part of the heart surgery thing. I wanted us to hold our facility with an open hand. Right. And I wanted us to go to a place of sacrifice. I wanted to move people out of Bible study classrooms for the sake of the community. Now, we have some classrooms that had, I call it the highest price storage junk in Northern Virginia. So we have plenty of space, don't get me wrong, but I wanted to lead our congregation to give it up. I wanted them to give up something, not just offer our leftovers.
Yeah, amen to that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Do we have any more questions? Well, seeing none. Thank you so much, Philip. And yeah, we are right here at 2:31. I just wanted to thank everyone for being a part of this. Really means a lot to me to see that everyone was excited to participate and wanted to learn more about some of the ways that we can begin to have these important conversations, like Mark said, before they become something that is immediate need to start that process of discernment early on. And, we presented the Partners in Sacred Places program last year when I had come into the role. And one thing that I noticed in my first year is that every church is different and every situation is different. And there's never going to be a one size fits all approach to even just something as important as discernment. So with this, I hope you would leave here realizing that what we're trying to present is that even when it comes to doing these early stages and engaging in a program or cohort like this, that there's so many different ways that you could approach it. You could be a congregation that feels, you know what, we need something like Project Regeneration from the Presbyterian Foundation because we don't have a lot of resources to employ towards this, and we need someone to step alongside us in that journey. Or you could also find that the Good Futures Accelerator course fits what your congregation's needs are at this moment. You could say, we are healthy at this time, but engaging in a self-directed course is something that would really work for us because we do have time and we have the ability to approach this under our own guidance. And, sometimes you might say, hey, building for hope with how hands-on and guided it is, that's really something that appeals to us, that we really want to make a larger practice of this. And we want to engage in something that might take more time than something that might be a self-guided course. So again, just want to thank everybody for coming to this edition of Collaborative Conversations. If you have any questions or you want to follow up with any of our speakers, please reach out to me. I'm going to go ahead and put my email address in the chat. And I will also have a recording of this if you would like that to share with members of your congregation.
Yeah, I would urge for those, again, get that out to everybody, that recording, just so, because it takes an hour, and for our congregations to all be aware of these three opportunities would be really important, Thomas. So I'm hoping we get that out, because I can only tell you that there's three of us that are here that are part of the property committee, and the work that we have been doing of what you do with this property, it's hard work, right? Because you want it to be, you don't want it just to go to another subdivision. So if you want your congregation to be affordable housing, you want your congregation to go to Native Americans, whatever it is, do it before we get it. Anyway, thank you.
We have a question from Carolina Marshall.
Unmute.
Yeah, no, I think they are unmuted. Oh, there we go. It's like maybe some technical troubles.
Yeah.
Well, I will say, Caroline, if you're able to type in, oh, here we are. I believe so. Oh, yeah, and as I was just about to say, Mark, would you feel comfortable ending us in prayer?
I would. I guess you're asking me.
Yeah.
Who, me? Okay. Let us pray. God, you've given us this amazing calling to follow you and to take out that good news to the world around us. We were first invited to share in that meal so long ago, where it looked like a meal could hardly feed a couple families, and yet it fed 5,000. from impossible dreams comes a reality of love. God, I ask that you would continue to empower our congregations to be a place of love with all of the resources that you've given us. And we thank you for this collaborative effort that stretches across this country, and we know that it connects us to everywhere in this world. And so we give you thanks for bringing us together. Amen.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you.
All right.
Thank
Thanks
you
so much,
all.
everyone.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you, Thomas. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Blessings.